I never imagined my life would take this turn. At 34, I found myself in a situation that seemed like it was straight out of a movie. But let me start from the beginning, because that's the only way the story makes sense. I met my wife 7 years ago through Instagram. We bonded over our shared love of music, and soon we were talking every day. The early days were wonderful. We would spend hours chatting about everything and nothing. I was cautious about getting into a relationship because I had witnessed my dad endure a painful marriage. But she seemed different, understanding, kind. After dating for a year, we decided to get married. The first few years were good, though not perfect. We had our share of joyful moments, movie nights, weekend getaways, and all the small things that make a marriage work. But by the third year, things started to change. The arguments began. Small disagreements over household chores or what to watch on TV at first, but they grew bigger and more frequent. Every month, we'd have at least one major fight that left us both frustrated. I suggested we try marriage counseling, thinking it could help us work through whatever was causing these issues. We went to one session, just one. The counselor tried to help us understand each other's perspectives, but my wife didn't like it. She refused to go back, claiming that the counselor was biased against her. I think she just didn't want to face the fact that she might need to work on herself too. Her temper worsened after that. She never broke anything or hit anyone, but the yelling became more frequent. I thought it might be related to her recent loss of her mom, but whenever I tried to talk to her about it, she shut me out completely. We fell into a routine of just coexisting. The spark was gone, but I still loved her. I believed that marriages needed work, and I wasn't ready to give up unless something truly serious happened. I grew up thinking that marriage was something you didn't walk away from without trying everything to save it. Then came the business trip that changed everything. I work in sales. Nothing fancy, just a regular job that occasionally requires me to travel. This particular trip was supposed to last 4 days, but on the third day, we were called back due to an emergency at the office. I decided to surprise my wife. Looking back, maybe I was trying too hard to rekindle the excitement in our marriage. I bought her favorite flowers, yellow tulips, and headed home early. I had my key, so I let myself in quietly, thinking I'd surprise her. The house was eerily quiet when I walked in. No TV, no music playing. I checked the living room first, then the kitchen. Empty. When I reached the bedroom door, I heard sounds that made my stomach drop. I opened the door, and there they were, my wife with another man. The image is burned into my memory forever. The shock on their faces when they saw me standing there with flowers in my hand. It was like time stopped. The guy quickly grabbed his clothes and tried to push past me. I caught him by the throat and slapped him twice. I'm not proud of getting physical, but in that moment, I wasn't thinking clearly. After he left, my wife just stood there, adjusting her clothes and hair as if nothing had happened. But what she said next made my blood boil. "Why are you even back?" she spat. Those words hurt more than finding her with someone else. She wasn't sorry. She was angry that I caught her. She started ranting about how I wasn't supposed to be back, how this was somehow my fault for not telling her I was coming home early. Then, she brought up how she had asked for an open relationship before and how she had needs. I grabbed her shirt and raised my fist. I'm not proud of that moment. I've never hit a woman and never will, but I came close that day. The fear in her eyes snapped me back to reality, and I let go. As I walked out, she screamed at me, accusing me of trying to hit her, saying I wasn't a real man, and many other things I don't even want to repeat. Later, my friend Tom told me she probably wanted me to hit her, so she could use it against me in court. I crashed at Tom's place that night. He made me drink while I told him everything, and he kept insisting I needed to divorce her right away. I worried about the cost. It was clear I made more money than her, and I didn't want to pay alimony. But Tom convinced me that having proof of her infidelity would help with that. What happened next showed me a side of my wife I never knew existed. She began sending me hurtful text messages, comparing me to the other guy, trying to hurt me in every way possible. Tom was smart enough to advise me to screenshot everything. Sure enough, just a few minutes later, she unsent all those messages and replaced them with regular insults that had nothing to do with her cheating. I spent the next few days and a daze trying to figure out what to do next. Little did I know, this was only the beginning of a story that would get much crazier than I could have ever imagined. After a month of searching, I found an affordable divorce lawyer. He seemed confident about handling my case, especially with the screenshots I had saved. He told me we might not avoid alimony completely, but he'd do his best to minimize it. My wife took her time responding to the divorce papers. An entire month. I think she did it just to annoy me. When the proceedings finally started, she made everything difficult. She'd argue over everything, from who owned what to when we could schedule meetings. It was clear she was just trying to make my life harder. During this time, I tried to move on. I had some one-night stands, but they only made me feel worse. That's why I never wanted an open marriage. I'm just not built for casual relationships. I needed something real, something meaningful to help me heal. That's when I decided to get back into reading. I used to love books before life got too busy. One day, I went to a local bookstore looking for something to take my mind off everything. I was standing in the science fiction section, completely lost, since I hadn't read anything new in years. There was a woman looking at books in the same section. I asked her for recommendations, and we ended up talking for almost an hour about our favorite books and authors. There was something special about how easy it was to talk to her. Before I left, I got her number and bought the book she recommended. I was honest with her from the start about my ongoing divorce. She appreciated my honesty and said it didn't bother her. We started dating, and for the first time in months, I felt happy again. She wasn't a distraction from my problems. She was someone who came into my life naturally and made it better. But my wife wasn't done making my life difficult. The divorce was dragging on, and I'd been dating this new woman, let's call her Sarah, for about 5 months. What happened next still gives me nightmares. Sarah and I were walking to her car after spending the afternoon shopping. We were laughing about something when I heard a car engine rev up. Everything happened so fast after that. I saw a car coming straight at us, more specifically at Sarah. I pulled her arm to get her out of the way, but the car still hit her leg. I heard her scream as she fell. I saw her leg was broken. The car hit another vehicle and then started backing up. I had to pull Sarah between a few parked cars to shield her because the driver was attempting to strike us once more. At that moment, people began rushing toward us to help. Then the driver stepped out, and I could hardly believe my eyes. It was my wife. She appeared completely unhinged, trying to charge toward us again, but some bystanders managed to hold her back. I was in disbelief. How could anyone be so consumed with hate to try to take another person's life? The police and ambulance arrived swiftly. As the officers handcuffed her, she started shouting about how I had moved on too quickly, as if I were the one at fault. Sarah was swiftly transported to the hospital. I was terrified. Was this the end of my relationship? Who would want to stay with someone whose unhinged ex-wife had just tried to kill them? But Sarah stunned me. She reassured me that as long as my wife was in prison, we had nothing to worry about. The case against her was airtight. The parking lot cameras had captured everything. Her passing us once, likely spotting us, and then coming back around to attempt running Sarah over. The prosecutors had a simple case to prove it was a deliberate attack, not a mere accident. The court process was draining. I had to miss work for hearings, give statements, and deal with the stress of seeing my wife in court. But the evidence was indisputable. Witness testimonies, security footage, and our accounts made it clear. There was no way for her to wriggle out of this. The trial lasted longer than expected, but in the end, she was convicted of attempted murder and multiple other charges, receiving a 12-year sentence. Some felt it wasn't enough, but the judge took into account her clean record and her claim of regret. I wasn't buying her apology, but at least she'd be locked away for a long time. The best part came when we returned to finalize the divorce proceedings. She attended via video calls from prison, and at times, only her lawyer appeared. After everything she had done to Sarah, the judge wasn't inclined to go easy on her. She received nothing in the divorce. No alimony, no extra perks. Just the possession she had before we married. When the judge made that decision, I felt a massive weight lift off my shoulders. Everything had finally fallen into place, even though the journey had been incredibly wild. But there was still more to come. After the divorce was finalized, I was eager for a fresh start. I couldn't stay in the same apartment where I had caught my wife cheating. Every room held painful memories. Sarah and I found a new place, and moving in with her felt like the start of something real and beautiful. Sarah fully recovered from her injuries, and sometimes she jokes about it, saying she took one for the team to get my wife out of our lives. I don't find it funny, but I understand it's her way of coping. She's unbelievably strong. Most people would have fled after something like that, but she stayed. Tom visits us often. He likes to remind me that I owe him for urging me to screenshot those text messages. He's right. Those screenshots played a huge role during the divorce. He's also proud that he pushed me to divorce my wife immediately instead of attempting to salvage the relationship. Some things can't be fixed, he always says, and he was spot on. The entire experience has transformed how I view relationships. I once believed that with enough effort, any marriage could be salvaged, but now I understand that's not always true. People change, and sometimes not for the better. The woman I married wasn't the same person who tried to murder Sarah. The one who spent Sundays making pancakes with me was long gone. I still think about how things could have been different. Maybe I should have left when the arguments first escalated, or pushed harder for counseling. But dwelling on what-ifs won't help anyone. What happened, happened. Sarah and I have been together for 2 years now. We're talking about getting married, but we're not in a hurry. She understands why I want to take it slow this time. She says she'd prefer a long, happy relationship over a quick marriage that might fall apart. The apartment we share is filled with books. We turned one of the spare rooms into a library, filling the shelves from floor to ceiling. It's funny how something as simple as asking for a book recommendation changed my life. Sometimes, the best things happen when you least expect them. My ex-wife will be in prison for at least 8 more years, maybe less with good behavior. I try not to worry about when she'll be released. Sarah says we'll deal with it when the time comes, and she's right. There's no point stressing over something so far away. Work is going well. I got promoted last year, partly because I didn't let the chaos affect my job performance. Juggling court dates and legal battles while maintaining my sales targets wasn't easy, but I managed. My boss told me he was impressed with my professionalism throughout. Tom keeps suggesting I write a book about what happened. He thinks people would want to read it. Maybe he's right, but I'm not ready to relive everything in such detail. For now, I'm content sharing my story here, hoping it might help someone going through something similar. Looking back, I realized that catching my wife cheating was actually a blessing. If I hadn't come home early that day, I might still be trapped in that unhappy marriage. It hurt at the time, but it led me to where I am now, in a healthy relationship with someone who truly cares about me. The hardest lesson I learned is that sometimes the person you trust the most can hurt you the worst. But I also learned that there are good people out there, people who will stand by you no matter what. Sarah proved that to me. I still have the book Sarah recommended the day we met. It sits on our bedside table. Even though I finished it long ago, it reminds me that good things can emerge from bad situations, and that sometimes the worst moments in your life can lead to the best ones. Life isn't perfect now, but it's good, really good. Sarah and I have our routines. Weekend brunches, movie nights, long talks about books. It's the kind of simple happiness I always wanted but never had in my marriage. I don't take it for granted anymore. If there's one thing I want people to take away from my story, it's this: don't stay in a bad situation just because you're afraid of change. Change can be good. It might be exactly what you need, even if you don't realize it at the time. And if someone shows you they really are, believe them the first time. The future looks bright. Sarah and I are planning to buy a house next year. We want a bigger library, maybe a garden. Simple dreams, but they're ours. And that's all that matters. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might appreciate it too. Your support means the world to me. If you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.